As long as your ROI is above 100, you're making money. If it's exactly 100, you're breaking even. If it's below 100, you're losing money. Okay? And on that note, let's talk about something of a slightly different example. Okay? Let's say, for example, let me erase this here. Let's talk about a case where we actually have a lower profit margin. Okay? Let's say we're not as good of a business. We don't have the type of business that has a 70% profit margins. Okay? Let's say, for example, our profit margins were only 40%. Okay? The tables have been turned on us. So we have a 40% profit margin, which, guys, tell me how much of that is cost. If my profit margins are 40%, then obviously 60% is 60 cents on the dollar goes to the costs. Okay? So I have a little bit more of an expensive business to advertise for. Now, I want to do the same exact mathematical calculation. The first thing I need to do is figure out this number here. What is my cost? What is my cost to the business? Okay? And just for clarity's sake, this divided by cost, this is really cost of ads. This cost is the cost of doing business. So I do the same thing, right? So I take my total ad spend. I take my total conversion value, right, which is 1,432, right, 1,432, and to get my cost of doing business, I have to multiply that by 0.6. Okay, that is how I get the cost of doing business for these profit margins. And if you do the math in your calculator, 1432 multiplied by 0.6 comes out to 859.20. Okay, so I have 859.20. Now what I need to do is plug in my ROI calculation. So ROI equals revenue, which is 1432 minus 859.20 divided by my cost of ads, which is 897. And do you know what we get when we plug in these numbers here? We get a total, and let me put this in red because it's a red number. Red is bad. 0.63. All right. I hope you're following along with your calculator. And this is our ROI for the same conversion value, but with different profit margins. Right. The same ad spend, the same conversion value, but we changed around our profit margins. Now, instead of pocketing 70 cents, we only pocket 40 cents on the dollar. And this is a 0.63 ROI, which means we're losing money. Overall in the account, we're losing money. Okay, that's what ROI means over there. 0.63, meaning, what does that mean? For every dollar we spend, we only make 63 cents back. So we're losing money. We're losing 37 cents every time we spend $1 in advertising. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you should shut off your campaigns. In fact, in most cases, it doesn't. Because there's other types of value that a client brings. You have to think about word of mouth referrals. You have to think about the value of your company getting more exposure. It might be perfectly fine to have a 0.63% ROI. It totally depends on your marketing goals and your business goals. It really, really depends, and it's greatly influenced. Your marketing goals, your business goals are greatly influenced by what would be an acceptable ROI or what would be an acceptable ROAS. And once again, if you don't have profit margins, if your company sells digital goods and there's no real cost of servicing the client, then ROAS is the way to go. Return on ad spend. Just look at your conversion value and determine the profitability of your account using the ROAS calculation. That's perfectly fine. Now, one more very, very important factor here, and let's do a little bit of an erasing. We want to figure out what is our break-even point. If I know my profit margins, it would be a great piece of information to know how much. It would be a good piece of information to know how much I could spend, or how much I need to spend to break even. That's called our break-even point. How do we determine what our break-even point is? And that's actually a really simple thing to do. But once again, even before we do that, you still need to know what your profit margins are. That's one thing that AdWords cannot tell you. You need to sit down and figure out exactly what your profit margins are. But once we know our profit margins, we're able to easily calculate what our what our ROI needs to be. So for example, let's talk about a case where our profit margins are, let's say, 40%, okay? So our profit margins are 40%. And you don't need to have run an AdWords account to know this. This is something which you could determine well before you run your AdWords account. I know that if I sell a product or a good or a service for $100 and my profit margins are 40%, that means I've made $40. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. Okay? So, but how much do I need to make for every dollar spent advertising to break even with a 40% profit margin? So the calculation for that is really simple. Okay? You just simply divide your profit margin into 1. So it's 1 divided by 0.4. And for those of you who know math, it's an easy answer. For those of you who don't, simply crack out a calculator. That equals 2.5. Okay? 2.5 is my minimum ROI, my ROAS, in order to break even. Or in other words, this is also the same thing as saying 250%. What you're saying is, in order for me to be profitable, I need to make back $2.50 for every dollar spent on advertising. Why? Because if you think about it this way, I'm going to help you understand what this number is. For every $2.50 you make, right? For every $2.50 of sales, you only make $1 because that's your profit margin, right? You're only making 40% of that. So that's $1. And then you subtract $1 for the ads, and then you're left with 0. So that's your break-even point, okay? You spent $1, you made $2.50, and you come out being equal at 0 because for that $2.50 that you made, you profited $1, and then you have to pay Google that $1 for the ad that you spent, okay? So in order to break even, or you need to be making at least $2.50 on advertising. In order to be profitable with profit margins of 40%, you need to be making anything above $2.50. If you're making $2.51, you're profitable to a penny, okay? And so on and so forth. So that's how you calculate your break-even point. So this introduction to ROI and ROAS is crucial to help you be able to start understanding how to calculate your profits. Once you're tracking conversions and you have your conversion values in place and you know your margins, you could really intelligently calculate how successful your AdWords campaigns are. And this is when you really begin to get a sense of how you're doing and where you could improve in the account. You'll be able to find certain keywords have a really low ROI. Certain keywords have a really good ROI, even though the costs per click might be much, much more expensive for the better ROI, for the higher ROI keywords. And actually that's usually something you're going to find frequently, because the better keywords that generally lead to more sales are also the keywords that your competitors are advertising on more aggressively. So you might find certain keywords with much higher cost per click, but really they're the ones that are driving business, and that not only do you know that they're driving business, you'll be able to know the profitability by using ROI and ROAS, knowing your margins, making sure your conversions values are being tracked. So that's a very good foundation from which we're going to be able to eventually create profitable max CPC bids. In the next video, let's walk through understanding a profitable bidding strategy, how to look at revenue per click, and how to use the information, the historic data in your account to determine what your max CPC bid should be. We'll see you right back here in a couple minutes. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was a really good one. This stuff is really, really exciting for me. And cheers for now, and I will see you very soon. Thanks.